What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Wing and Tail Boys podcast, your Northeast hunting and fishing destination. I'm Chris,
And I'm Angelo.
and we're your hosts. Join us as we navigate the woods and waters of the Northeast, sharing our passion for the outdoors.
Whether it's land management, outdoor recreation, hunting, or fishing, we're going to cover it all. With 40 plus years of experience in the Northeast, we'll provide insights, tips, and stories to help you make the most of your adventures and help you experience the wild.
So, tune in, grab your gear, and let's hit the woods together. And always remember, success is just a commitment away. Yo! What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Wing and Tail Outdoors podcast. Today is a very exciting episode for me, if you couldn't tell from the tone of my voice, because we are finally expanding north into Maine and New Hampshire with today's guest. As you guys know from the intro, our goal on this podcast has always been to cover the Northeast, but we decided to kind of focus on our home turf to start, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, like that area, and kind of start to get our feet wet and get a foothold of and kind of figure out what it is that we're doing here. And I think we're finally ready to go ahead and expand. So today's episode welcomes guest Ben Polcaro. He is a friend of mine who lives up in New Hampshire, and Ben has grown up hunting southern Maine and New Hampshire his entire life. He's hunted private property and public land in southern Maine where there's high deer populations and also high pressure hunter pressure. And he's also again hunted New Hampshire where there's less deer, but also equally as much, or if not more, hunter pressure. Regardless of the deer population and the pressure of the areas he's hunting, Ben has found a way to harvest a buck every year that he has been hunting. And he has been hunting probably as long as me. He started hunting when he was younger. He's now in his 30s. So there's a plethora of information and experience being shared in today's episode. We discuss things like his upbringing and how he got into hunting, what his start was like, the tactics he used early compared to the tactics he uses today, his transition from hunting with family to hunting solo, all of those things, land management. There's a whole bunch of things that we discuss today. And it's information that you can use to bring out to the field with you today, tomorrow, and this season to help you find success right away. So I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Now, before we get into today's episode, last week's posting, or 2 weeks ago, I believe, was the 52nd episode of the Wing and Tail Outdoors podcast. We've posted one episode every week for 52 weeks, which means we have been podcasting for one whole year. That means it is time for the Wing and Tail Outdoors first ever giveaway to our listeners. We've partnered up with Rat Getter Sense, Gerard over at Rat Getter Sense, and he has given us basically a sampler scrape kit for us to give away for our 1 year of podcasting. This kit comes with a couple different scents and his rack rope. His signature rack rope is different than anybody's out there. And it comes with different scents that you can use at all different times of the season. It really is a great care package. Now, if you want some more information, if you want to see exactly what it is that we are giving away, keep your eyes open on our Instagram page, because that is where all of the details of the giveaway are going to be held. I want to thank you guys for a year of support, a year of podcasting, a year of interaction, a year of following along. And honestly, it's been a great year. I really enjoyed it. This is just the beginning. We don't plan on going anywhere. So again, head on over to the Wing and Tail Outdoors Instagram page and keep an eye out for the details of the giveaway. Last but not least, behind me here today, if you're watching on YouTube, I have one whole nested tree stand system sitting behind me. And that's because I began recording my review of the nested tree stand system. Now, if you guys are still in the market for a mobile system for the 2025 hunting season, I urge you to head on over to the nestedtreestand.com and check out what it is that they have to offer. You can either get their whole kit. It comes with a platform, a core pack, a carrying harness, and a couple other attachments, and also the climbing rails, the light rails, that all fit together perfectly to pack into the woods, and it makes however much weight that you're carrying into the woods feel like nothing because of the way that it sits on your hips, and it puts the weight on your legs and your hips, which are the strongest muscles of your body. If you head on over to that website and you like what you see, use code UT10 at checkout to save yourself some money and to also help the podcast out a little bit as well. You can also just scroll on to the bottom of the description here in this episode for a link directly to their website. As far as updates are concerned, that's all I've got for you today. Hunting season is strongly approaching. We start in less than a month. I believe the New Jersey opener is in 23 days. So good luck to any of you out there who have already started. Good luck to those of you who are going to start before next week's podcast. And until next week, remember, success is just a commitment away. Without further ado, Ben Polcaro, ladies and gentlemen. Wing and Tail Boys podcast is brought to you by Truth Sticks Custom Arrows. Built with Fire Knock technology, Truth Sticks Custom Arrows simply fly flatter, spin faster, and improve arrow efficiency downrange. With 2 signature arrows for the compound bow and a signature crossbow bolt, they've got something for everyone. If you're ready to take the guesswork out of archery and take the best performing arrow into the field, then check out Truth Sticks Custom Arrows at wingandtailoutdoors.com and experience the truth of arrow flight. On today's episode, I'm really excited to welcome Ben Polcaro of New Hampshire. He's a friend of mine, friend of a friend of mine from New Hampshire. Kind of got together. He's like, you got to get this guy on. Huge Maine hunter, goes after big bucks down in Maine. Ben, if you can take a second, introduce yourselves to the listeners. Give them like just a quick baseball card of who Ben is and what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, appreciate that, Chris. Good to talk to everybody here this afternoon. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, I wouldn't say I'm a big buck hunter in Maine by any means. There's certainly better hunters up that way than myself. But yeah, I grew up in southern Maine. Been hunting the better part of 20 years now. Live in New Hampshire currently. I've only hunted in the state of New Hampshire for a handful of years, but hunt both states now. And yeah, been, like I said, been hunting for the better part of 20 years. Ever since I could when I was 10 years old. It's the first time I got out there.
Hey, man. Just before we started recording, I told you I'm really excited for this conversation because I've met hunters from Maine before, but I've never actually taken the time to sit down and talk to like a true Maine hunter. And I would imagine that like hunting southern Maine is slightly different or drastically different than hunting northern Maine too, right? Like almost like 2 different worlds kind of thing.
Very different. Yeah, it's a great point. And well, I'm glad to be your first Mainer. Hopefully it will be a good experience for you, man. But yeah, southern Maine, a little bit more populated, right? To start with, of course, it's just more people down there in that part of the state. The woods aren't as big either, right? So there's certainly some public land tracks you can get on, but there's plenty of private property as well that, access by permission only or whatnot, that there's a lot of that there, but a lot more hunters in southern Maine than in northern Maine. Okay. I think in northern Maine, there's a lot more deer in southern Maine as well, right? So like deer per acre, you're certainly going to have a ton more deer in the southern part of the state than you're going to see in the northern part of the state. That's the pro to hunting in southern Maine. I got some friends that live in northern Maine that hunt there, do it pretty well. And it's a different animal in the sense that the size of the deer up there is just different, right? So they see less deer, but there's a lot more 200-pounders up in that part of the state. You can your typical 8-pointer in the southern part of the state might be a 2.5, 3.5-year-old, right? That's 150 pounds, but northern part of the state, 1 in every 10 is over 200, right? So it's definitely different between the two.
So they're practically Canadian deer up there at that point.
If you get up there far enough, man, yeah, you're in like, Fort Kent, Fort Fairfield, the county. You're hunting Canadian deer for the most part. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm really excited to kind of break this down a bit and kind of get a feel for your style of hunting and how you like to hunt. But before we get into that, let's take it back a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about your early years in hunting. How did you get into hunting? Did you come from like a hunting family? Did your family hunt? Did you have a mentor? Talk us through your intro to hunting.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So for me, really, it was my dad, right? So he's a big hunter. I've learned the majority of what I've learned, if not all of what I've learned, has come from him. He's certainly a big mentor in my life, especially on the hunting side. And he's an avid hunter, avid outdoorsman, really knows his stuff. And that's what got me into it at a young age, right? I'm also an only child, right? So no siblings. Obviously, you're going to have a pretty close relationship with your parents as an only child. And I wanted to be like him, right? I wanted to get out in the woods, do what dad did kind of. And even before I was 10, he'd take me out without a gun or whatnot, right? And just kind of be there with them in the tree stand, getting a feel for it when I was like 8, 9 years old. And but that's what really got me into it. It's just his passion for it, and having a family, obviously his friends too, right? Like he had a group that they kind of go out together, 4 or 5 guys that have been doing it every year. And that's what pulled me in.
Okay. And what kind of hunting were you doing in those early years? Was it deer hunting right off the rip, or were you guys out? Were you small game hunting at all? Rabbit hunting? Like what did hunting look like for you back then?
Yeah. Primarily whitetail, right? So I was fortunate enough at the ages of 11 and 16. I've got two moose in the state of Maine, 2 bull moose.
Awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, but to get drawn like that twice, I mean, I know folks that go their whole lives without getting drawn, and I feel for those people, right? Like I'm like, I want them to get a tag and get a moose, right? So I did get a couple bull moose, but primarily whitetail. Lot of stand hunting. It was all rifle for me in the early years. We're pretty traditional. I had a 243 single shot with a scope, 4 variable scope. And, I thinking back 20 years, right? I don't know how confident I was at long ranges or anything, but, I was trying to find something within 100 yards, and historically always been a stand hunter, right? Get up in the tree and have a pattern and stuff. And my dad was pretty good to me, putting me in good spots at a young age. I think it's important for a young hunter to have some success early on. I think that's a big reason why it stuck with me. Like, I think if I had been 10, 11, 12 years old and I wasn't fortunate enough to harvest some bucks, I might have lost interest, or maybe wasn't as avid as I am now. But I was fortunate enough to get, a few bucks at a younger age, and pretty consistently got one year over year. And I think that kept me on it.
For sure, man. And I think it's also important, bringing up the topic of young kids, being that, we have a newborn, and hopefully she loves the outdoors and wants to come and join me, but one of the important things too is helping them understand that success doesn't only come with a harvest, right? Success is learning something new every time you go out in the woods. And if you can learn something new every time you go, there's a victory right there. Because anyone who spent more than 2 years hunting in the woods knows that every year isn't a successful harvest. And if we're going off those harvest numbers, man, it's tough sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. You make a really great point, Chris, right? I think also just being in the woods, right? And like, I don't want to call it like your Zen state, but getting out into the outdoors, getting away from all the noise and what is the world today, and even back then, right? There's a lot of factors that influence the day to day, but it's nice to be able to escape from that. And to your point, even if you don't get a buck every year, right, or harvest a doe or whatever you're going after, whatever you're fortunate enough to get, you learn something when you're out there, right? Like you pick up on something that a deer might be doing, or you're scouting a new piece of woods, like that all is part of the puzzle and part of what makes it fun. It's a great point.
Exactly. And when I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, and recently I've been trying to find podcasts with some quote unquote old timers, like the guys who did it before all this technology and were able to get it done time after time. And some of the coolest things, if you listen to enough, is you start to pick up on this concept of, when I was young, my parents showed me X, Y, and Z. And then as I grew older, I took that and built from it, or I mastered it or made it better or got deeper into it. So sometimes success is just taking like something simple that you learned when you were younger and just building off of that. In that sense, you said your dad, you were fortunate enough that your dad took you, put you in some preset stands, were fortunate to put you in some good spots early on. Yeah. What did those spots look like? How did your dad go about deciding where he was going to put a stand? Was it just willy-nilly through the woods and this looks great? Or was there I guess what I'm looking for is, what type of woodsmanship was he using, both of you using in those early years?
Yeah. And we'll give him the credit in the early years, right? I certainly, at 10 years old, I probably didn't know what I was looking for the most part, right? We can be honest there, but yeah, it's obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but it's not a spray and pray, like in terms of find a tree randomly and put a stand up and kind of hope, right?
Sure.
I've always said, and something he said that stuck with me, is you don't go where you want the deer to be, you go to where the deer are. And it sounds simple, but I think when you're out scouting, any level of hunting, scouting in the preseason is massively important. Find the feed, find the deer runs, find the water source, where are they bedding down? And then, I think when you have that figured out and you get a pretty good pattern of what the deer are doing, that allows you to be like, okay, now I can kind of find the tree. Where am I going to set up? Where am I getting the most activity? Where are they coming through? And I think different parts of the season changes that a little bit. I didn't think of that when I was younger, but the early season, I think it's more about finding feed, right? And the deer are focused on feed. And even late in the season when they start yarding up, right? If you get into December and some of those like muzzleloader times in Maine or archery again in New Hampshire, you're kind of back on food. But in the rut, that can all change too. So then it's, he would always tell me, and what I've learned over the years is like, you got to find the does. If you're around the does, a buck that you maybe didn't have patterned or thought was in the area is probably going to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important too. But yeah, it's all about sign. And if you're going to have, in my opinion, the most successful hunters that I've met and talked to in my community are ones that get out there and scout heavily in the preseason and really, really have it figured out before they even get in the stand.
Yeah, man. I think the number one most important thing, whether you're a beginner or an expert, is you got to get out there, right? There's this saying that you can't kill a deer from a couch, right? And the truth is sometimes you do more damage going in the woods than if you were to just stay home. So in that sense, sure, you can kill a deer from the couch, but at the same rate, you can't find deer from the couch, right? Like you could do your e-scouting and you can, do your pre-scout or however you want to look at it. But until you go in there and see what's going on, it's just a concept, a theory, an idea, right? So staying on the topic of your dad for a little bit here, was there, when you're talking about finding the feed, was there any agriculture in your area where you were hunting, or was it all natural, either browse or like mast trees, like acorns and stuff like that? What kind of feed were you guys focusing on?
That's a great question. And every area is different, right? So I know there's all different food sources that people are probably, subject to depending on the area they live or whatnot. For us, we were fortunate. We had a lot of white oaks. We had like a white oak ridge that was very close to the house near the property that we hunted. And, white oaks are people that know deer, right, know that white oaks are not a bad thing to have in your backyard, so to speak. So that certainly helped, and there's a pretty large swamp in the area that I grew up and hunted. So you got cover, you got the feed. It's a natural spot for deer to be. There's certainly some apple trees and stuff too, and that sort of thing here and there on like, some people's backyards, right, that are a little closer to the houses and stuff, but didn't really hunt on any apple orchards or, like cornfields or anything like that. It was a lot more natural woods feed, again, like the white oak. That was primarily what we were hunting around and what we were looking for. Yeah.
Now, I may have missed this. If I did, I apologize. But this property that you were hunting back then, was it private? Was it public? Was it a little bit of both?
Yeah, when I started out, it's a great question. My dad owned about 100 acres when I started. Yeah, that definitely helped. And that 100 abutted another, call it 400 from another private landowner, but it was open to hunting. It wasn't posted or whatnot, and he let people hunt on it. And then that abutted a nature conservancy that was about, 2,000 acres. So amazing. Yeah, like it was a
perfect scenario.
A perfect scenario. Yeah. I'm not going to, I won't sugarcoat that. We were fortunate. Yeah.
Okay. Now I want to clarify, because a majority of our listeners as of now are from like the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Okay. And around here, it doesn't matter. So how do I want to put this? The responsibility to know border lines, property lines is on the hunter. Yep. It doesn't matter if they're posted or not.
Right.
It doesn't matter. If it's a boundary, it's a boundary, and it's the hunter's responsibility to know whether it's posted or not. I think that's ridiculous. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know about Maine, but I know New Hampshire is, if it's not posted, it's free game. And, in a world where, some people, I get it. Some people's lives get a little busy. Maybe they don't have the time to go out and post. I understand that completely. But we're talking about invisible lines and invisible barriers. And in a world where even when you have the best technology, you could be off by 50 yards in either direction. Right. It almost seems unfair to the hunter to require that level of responsibility.
I wouldn't disagree with you, Chris. Right? I think it's not a gray area, but it's difficult sometimes because there's no lines drawn in the sand, so to speak. Right. So when you're out in the woods, I use Onyx. Right. I think it's a good app. I think most hunters, for the most part, do use something like on Onyx. It helps you find those boundary lines. When you're out there, there's not this red line going through the trees that says like, this is this guy's property and this is this. Right. There's a gray area. Exactly. Maine is similar to New Hampshire. If it's not posted, you can hunt it. So it has to be legally posted. We were fortunate to know the people that own the other 400 acres, good relationship with them. So
Mm-hmm.
we had permission regardless, but they didn't post it in my early years at all. So, you could be out there and you'd run into a hunter and that probably didn't know them, but it was fine. They allowed it. And then obviously the Conservancy's public land. So you don't have to worry about backing up a nature conservancy.
Early season is so close in much of the Northeast, and fall food plots are on the minds of many. When it comes to food plot seed, Vitalized Seed has to be at the top of your list. Their multi-species blends work together to build your food plots from the soil up, starting with the 1-2 punch of Nitro Boost in the summer and Carbon Load in the fall. This combination helps to balance the carbon to nitrogen ratio and replenish nutrients in your soil year after year. They also offer other blends like Premium Clover Plus with oats and chicory, an annual clover mix, and a brassica mix if that aligns better with your management plan. In addition to their seeds, they have a wide selection of organic soil amendments to help tilt the odds of success in your favor. So if you're still in the market for some food plot seed this year, head on over to vitalizeseed.com to see everything they have to offer. Now, I never really ran into this problem in New Jersey. Very infrequently, if I was down in a gully or in a saddle or something, maybe I wouldn't have the greatest cell service. But but most of the time when I'm hunting Jersey, I would say 75% of the time in New York, I have cell service. When I hunted in New Hampshire, dude, I was like, it was like gold, like striking gold if you like stumbled upon cell service. I would imagine it's the same thing in some of the mountains of Maine and Vermont, especially in these vast forests. Like my wife and I just moved here to Pennsylvania, and one of the things we didn't think about when we moved here was the fact that there's no cell service. Not every, there's pockets, right? But a majority of the time you're driving around, there's no cell service. Now, what happens if, let's say I'm out at work and my wife goes out and she breaks down and there's no service? She's got the baby now. You know what I mean? It's like, I never thought of that. Now take that into the woods. And what we were just talking about, Onyx is great when you have GPS and everything is working.
True.
You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, man. Like as a property owner, I get it. I would like people to stay off my property if I don't want them there. But at the same rate, if I don't want them there, then I should at least go and do so, even if it's just spray painting the trees.
Oh yeah, you should.
Painting the perimeter of your property, something.
Yeah, I own 30 acres here in New Hampshire now myself, and same thing, right? Like if I don't want people on my property, I should go out and take the time to post it properly, put my name and number, and take the time to do that, because it isn't fair to. I'll say this: if you're a landowner and you're going to be upset that somebody's on your property, The only reason you should be upset is if it's clearly posted and you don't want somebody to be there without having permission. If you're not going to post it and someone's on your property, it's one thing if you want to go up and talk to them and say, hey, look, I know it wasn't posted. Like, I am trying to not have people here. If you can be civil about it, but you really shouldn't be upset because you didn't do your job as a landowner to help the hunter identify where the line is. And I've always felt that way too, Chris. Like, if a piece of property isn't posted and you're out in the middle of the woods somewhere, and let's say you don't have cell coverage and you happen to stumble on someone else's property that you didn't even know you were over the line and it wasn't posted, I mean, what are you going to do, right? And obviously, I think, at least in New Hampshire and Maine, I know you mentioned some tri-state people, they might have a different setup in those areas, and I don't know what the laws are there because I've never hunted there. But, you talk to a game warden in Maine or New Hampshire, and that situation comes up where you're not on a posted piece of property and maybe it abuts a public piece and you just happen to be there and it wasn't posted. You're never, I mean, they're going to take the side of the hunter there, but it makes it difficult on the hunter. It does.
Yeah. No, for sure. Now, you mentioned you had 100 acres, and I don't know how long ago would you say this was that you guys had this property up there?
Yes, and they still do. My father still lives there. So it's been carved up since. He still has about 30 acres.
Okay.
But 70 is with one other private owner now. But yeah, that the full 100 I had access to in my teens, and then once I went to college and stuff, it got broken up a little bit. With one other landowner. Yeah, they're still there, and I still hunt that same piece of wood, like that same area today.
Sure. Okay, so what was management like, if any, back when you were in your teens? Because like it seems like there's been this big explosion for property management and herd control and age structure and all these different things that, granted, they've been around since the 90s, 80s, right? It's been trickling down. It seems to have just exploded.
Sure.
But was there any of that for you guys growing up, or was it more so if it's brown, it's down? What was that like?
So again, we hunted with a group of a few guys, so I don't want to speak for everybody in that group. I think we were not as strict about it in the earlier years of my career, right? And I think a couple of the guys we still hunt with have different goals when it comes to hunting, right? Like they want to put meat in the freezer. We're still okay with that, right? If they got permission to hunt the land, like you do what you want to do for what's a successful harvest for you. I personally took at an early age. I was able to get a couple bucks before the age of 13, and I shot a doe at the age of 14. And ever since then, I've never shot a doe. So I've only hunted bucks, and I've been fortunate enough to get a buck every year since then. So I've never needed to shoot another doe for getting meat in the freezer, so to speak. My father's the same way. He, until I was about that age, he actually would shoot does and bucks, and now he hasn't shot a doe probably 15 plus years himself. Okay. He's kind of has the same thought process. We try to let the smaller bucks go. You want them to grow, right? So if you don't want to shoot the 4s and the 6s all the time, because then they don't have a chance to become that big 8 or 10 pointer that you're after, right? But you also want to put meat in the freezer. So for me, different times of the season will call for different situations. Like in the state of Maine, for bucks anyway, if it's not expanded archery, you can only shoot one buck in the state. Okay. So I typically try to shoot a good one, if you will, right, or hold out, because once I fill that buck tag, I'm not gonna, unless I go to expanded zone or something, I'm not with the bow. I'm not gonna be hunting in Maine anymore. Where in New Hampshire, it's very different. Right, you can shoot 2 with a bow, 1 with a firearm. You can shoot up to 3 bucks if you do the bonus art. So it's a lot less strict. And if I'm in New Hampshire, I'd be more likely to shoot a young buck for that reason than hold out for a mature one. Like, fill your freezer on a younger buck in New Hampshire. But we were never that strict about it. We've tried to limit the amount of does that get taken. I think the main reason for that is the does bring the bucks in. So the more does you have, the more likelihood a buck's going to come in during the rut. But we haven't made it like truly buck only in that area. And there are some guys that definitely go in there and shoot does. Yeah,
sure. And it's so cool to hear that, because everyone has a different school of thought. And I've been listening to some management podcasts as of late. I don't know if I told you or not. My family, we also have about 130 acres in upstate New York that I manage. So nice. New York State, I hunt private. New Jersey and Pennsylvania, I hunt public, which is really nice because New York, I could be selective. I can shoot for, we can pick and choose which deer we shoot and which ones we don't. And then Jersey and Pennsylvania, I could be a little bit more flexible with myself and say, oh, that got me excited. I'm going to drop it. And for me, the difference is on our property, I'm putting money into it and time and energy and blood and sweat and let's face it, arguments. When you're running a property with family, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of memories, and it's a lot of arguments that you guys got to work through. It's just the nature of it,
Very true.
But it's nice. I'll be honest with you, even having all that, it's really nice sometimes to just go and sit in public property and just shoot what I shoot and not feel like, like, what did I just do? Like last year, I'm not opposed to shooting doe on our property. And where I was going with this was they consider anything under, I think, like 400 to 600 acres, quote, small property, right? It's not small to manage, but it's small in the realm of whitetail. A deer can cross 100 acres in 5 minutes if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things I've been hearing a lot lately is some people will say you want less doe on your property because it forces the bucks to search and move around more to find the doe. But then a lot of people say that's for bigger properties. And when you have a smaller property, you want as many doe on your property as possible to keep the bucks on that smaller parcel for as much time out of the rut as possible. Which one is better? Whichever one works for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like there's so many different schools of thought and different avenues and ways that you can go about it. And the truth is, whatever gets you excited is what's best for you. And whatever gets me excited is what's best for me. And it sounds like, while it's great that you guys still have the property, it sounds like the awesome thing about having that was it was your ticket on a somewhat managed land. It was your ticket to get into hunting and be successful quickly and build that drive and that desire to want to get out. So
you nailed it, man. I mean, that's it, right? And I think everyone's version of success, to your point, is it's like what matters to them, right? Like, who am I to tell somebody that's out there in the woods that shoots a doe, like, why would you do that? Like that, I'm not like that, right? Like, you feed your family, fill the freezer. It's a great harvest. I'm happy for the person. Like, great. I'll probably help them drag it out of the woods, honestly. Like, it's kind of part of the culture of hunting. Like, you're doing it. You're all out there, and we're all trying to do the same thing. But yeah, it is interesting to get people's different takes on like land management. And I've historically had smaller pieces, if you will. Like I mentioned, the 100 acres or 30, like that's not a huge piece. So I've always taken the latter approach, keep the does around. It's not a big enough piece that we own per se to be able to, to take more does and have less.
right.
But when you're out on the public, like it was a change in my hunting, I'd say, over the years. So something I've noticed when I was younger, I kind of liked the private land hunting a little more, the land that we managed and like spending time there. As I've gotten older, I like branching out a lot more. I like challenging myself. I hunt a lot of public land now, a ton of public land, especially in New Hampshire. I actually shot my biggest buck in New Hampshire on public land. And like, I was pretty proud of that. Like
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a lot, man. Right? Like it wasn't like it was concealed. It wasn't just me. Right? I had to go. I always say go deeper than the deepest. Right? Like there were guys out there that were, I'd see a truck or two in the same area, and I'm like, you meet up with them at dark or something, right, on public land, and we talk about it, and they're like, dude, how far did you go? And I'm like, I was like 4 miles in. I was in there, man. And so it's a challenge, and like I like going after deer that everybody has access to, if that makes sense. Like it's just that. I don't know. It's a weird thing I've developed as I've gotten a little older and hunted more. It's a cool challenge to hunt public land and do that.
Gotcha. And I got to say, man, kudos to you for finding the success in New Hampshire, because we talked, like I lived in the Manchester area for a while and I hunted somewhat close. I wouldn't say somewhat close, but not crazy far away from Manchester. And Adam, I think Adam started hunting the year that I moved to New Hampshire. I think he was shooting a little bit before that and he wanted to get into it, and I took him around. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I kind of jokingly hold it over his head still to this day, because New Hampshire is the state and the hunting that humbled me as a hunter. Because growing up in New Jersey, very similar to you, my listeners know this, but my uncle was the hunter of the family. He's the reason we got into hunting. And he would take us, put us in either in a tree or put us in a location, or one time he would put us in a specific tree, and the next time we would go and pick our own. And in New Jersey, we're allowed to bait. My whole life, we hunted over bait. It was just how it was done. So I went my whole life shooting a deer, at least one deer, every year I hunted. Then I went away. I went to college. I found my own areas to hunt, and I found success there. That was awesome. Then all of a sudden, I go to New Hampshire, and it's like the deer turned off. I was able to find sign. I was able to find them on camera, but I could not find them when I was hunting.
Sure.
So this one day we go out, and Adam and I think we were bow hunting. I think, yeah, we had to have been, because if it was muzzleloader, I'd have shot her. But we're bow hunting, and Adam, I think, shoots at a doe. I think it was the first deer he ever shot at. And he was all frazzled, and he got down right away to like look for the arrow. I really hope I'm getting this story right. And he got down, he was all bent out of shape. So he started walking around trying to like follow tracks or to see anything. As he's walking around, it didn't register to me that he was circling and coming behind me. And as this is all going on, I can't see him. He just told me he was going for a walk. All of a sudden, I see a doe coming in from behind me. Now, mind you, I'd been hunting. This is my second year hunting in New Hampshire. I haven't even seen a deer in the daytime. No, I haven't had a deer in shooting range. I got to give myself a little bit more credit. But either way, it was about to be my first shot opportunity at a deer since moving to New Hampshire. She's coming in behind me. She's at about 25 yards straight behind my tree. All she's got to do is take 10 more steps on the trail that she's walking. And she is like perfect, strong side shot, broadside, like she's getting it. Yep. And next thing I know, she takes off up the hill and looks back. And I turn around, and Adam's big ass is standing there behind me. And I'm like, dude.
That's awesome, man.
What are you doing?
What are you doing to me,
like,
man?
Yeah. So it's like, I tell the story not to, I guess, to rib on him a little bit, in good fun. But it doesn't matter whether you're a kid or an adult. This hunting thing is a learning curve. Right. And it's you got to start at the bottom. The cool thing about these podcasts and all these things that are the opportunities and the learning environments that are out there today, they're really great for shortening the curve, but they don't remove the curve. And it's great to hear, I should do this, or you should go out and do that, or you should look for this here. But until you go in the woods and you figure out how to use that information for yourself, you're kind of just fumbling around, So in a sense, like, yeah, am I upset that I didn't get the shot? Sure. But it was also a really good learning opportunity for him, because after the fact, I was like, dude, all good. No harm, no foul. It is what it is. Next time you take the shot, hang out. You never know if another deer is going to come around. Or if you are going to walk around, just try not to go right underneath your buddy's tree.
Exactly. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, but to your point, like, and Adam, love the guy, by the way, right? He's a great dude, like just super good egg, man. And I call him a gentle giant. He's a big guy, but he's a teddy bear deep down. We can tell him that. And but I always find it like really cool guys that didn't have like your uncle or my dad that brought us into hunting, that picked it up at a later stage in their life. That's very difficult. Like if you don't have like a mentor to like show you the ropes in the woods and like show you the things that we learned at a very young age, it's a big learning curve, and until you go out there and do it, to your point, you can listen to you or I talk until you're blue in the, and try to like absorb all that, but you got to get out there and experience it. No doubt.
Exactly. And where do I want to go? Where was I going to go with that? Man, I had something really good too. That happens to me way too often. Anywho, so when you're young, you're walking through the woods. We talked about, finding the feed tree, the feed sign, whatever the food source is that you guys want to target, or it might be the highest attractant in the area. What about sign? Are you guys also, were you walking through the woods and paying attention to sign, whether it was scrapes, licking branches, rubs, tracks?
Oh yeah.
Like what was the woodsmanship in that sense in your early years?
Yeah. I mean, rubs and scrapes are important, right? Get on a good deer run. I mean, I think we've, again, love to fill the freezer, but we've historically gone after the bucks for the most part. So, we're constantly looking for rubs and the sign of a buck being in the air. The other thing, even as far back as the winter, right? You're looking for sheds, trying to figure out what's in the area. I mean, back then, cameras weren't as big of a thing, right, as they are now. But I think cameras are super important too, right? Like just to figure out what bucks are in your area, what time of day are they moving through, what are the conditions like when they're moving through. And I think you can get real scientific with it. I could do a better job of it, if I'm being honest. Like, I think that's an area of improvement for me. I mean, there are guys that talk about like, phases of the moon, right? And like the, and stuff like that about like, and it's like, all right. I mean, I was never like that into it, but there's probably something to it, man. Right? Like, I don't know, like if, you're picking up a deer on a half moon or a full moon more, or, whatever. Like, I think all that stuff's important, and rubs and scrapes, certainly, like, especially in the rut, right? Like you want to be around the activity when they're rutting up and they're getting territorial, and they're doing that to keep other bucks away or let them know their presence, right? Like that's probably going to be a pretty good spot to spend a little time in. But I've had years where I thought a buck was coming through a certain piece and he had it all rubbed up, and I'm like, oh, he's using this all the time. And then when I was sitting there, he never showed up, so like, it's like, I don't know what the deal was when I was there, but he smelled me, saw me, whatever, coming in. Like he was smarter than I was. And, so I don't, you don't want to get too caught up in sign, but yeah, it's important. Definitely important.
With the cooling evenings of the last weeks of summer approaching, deer beginning to become more active and, in many places, preparing to transition into their early season and pre-rut areas. This is the perfect time of year to start laying down some mock scrapes and to make sure you have all of your lures ready to go for the season. Here at Wing and Tail, we look no further than Rat Getter Scents for all our scent, lure, and attraction needs. Over the last year, I've personally tested out their rack rope, scrape rope, their igniter drip bags, and numerous different scents. Not only have they all been effective, but the rack rope helped put last year's top hit list buck in shooting range, and that mock scrape area has now become the new community scrape location for that section of our property. In addition to products for deer, they also offer products for bear, turkey, and fish as well. Being a local small business, Gerard hand delivers every product to his distributors, giving him the opportunity to have his hand on the pulse and deliver products that local, northeastern hunters are looking for. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to ratgetterscents.net and check out their full line of products today. Now, I want to begin to transition along your journey as a hunter. Now, before we leave the childhood Ben, I want to know, were there any steadfast, you absolutely do this, or there must be this to hunt here, or a steadfast, absolutely don't do this? For example, don't bother setting up a tree stand if there's not a scrape in the area, or don't you dare go in the woods without taking care of your clothes and your scent. Like, were there any steadfast, you absolutely have to have this, or a steadfast, do not do this for you as you were growing up?
Yeah, the big one, you actually hit the nail on the head with the latter of your comment. Scent control was drilled into me at a young age. I couldn't talk enough about scent control. If I gave like a couple major pieces of advice to any hunter, that would be on the top of my list. Mm-hmm. So whether you use, washing your clothes and no scent, even as far as the shampoos and the body washes and everything, like you're just trying to maintain your scent. I think a lot of people, and just people in general, they don't realize how like good of a sense of smell white-tailed deer have. And if you smell, they're going to pick up on it. They're going to know something's up. Don't bother. And I would also say, on the same token of scent, wind is a huge piece, right? Mm-hmm. So if the wind wasn't right, we wouldn't hunt certain stands because of the wind, right? Okay. Because we don't want to blow out an area because the scent's not, the thermals and everything, and the wind's blowing the wrong way. Like, that's not a recipe for success on it, especially when you're hunting white-tailed deer. So that'd be the biggest no red flag. Definitely don't do that. That has stuck with me till now.
Okay. Now, what trying to figure out how to ask this question without being rude. What decade are we talking about here? Were we hunting in the 90s? Were we hunting in the 2000s? What were your teen years?
Yeah. So I'm 31. Call it what it is, right? So I started hunting when I was in 2004. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the reason I ask is because this whole concept of wind and scent control and like the late 90s or 90s, 2000s, that was like the big boom in scent control, where all these products start coming out, like you're saying, shampoos and clothes washes, laundry detergent and all this good stuff, but you tend to not really. Now, I don't want to say nobody ever paid attention to scent, because I think they did, like you're saying, paying attention to the wind and all this good stuff. But you hear a lot of stories from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, where there were no deer around. There weren't deer anywhere. And it was just find a track, kill a deer, nothing else matters. And it's really cool to hear how your early years of hunting were right on that cusp of old timer, new timer style of hunting, I guess you could say. And you were still following what people would consider stricter regiments now. You only walk into the woods with the wind to your face. Don't go in the woods unless your clothes and your scent is taken care of. I'm assuming you don't get dressed till you get to the woods. You don't wear the clothes you're wearing in your tree stand to the gas station. That's how I was. And that's how I still am. Now, the only difference for me today, and I don't know if it's the same for you, is I no longer think I could beat a deer's nose. I don't think there's any possible way you are going to eliminate all sense of human scent.
Right.
What I do think I'm trying to do, my goal is, instead of a deer knowing I'm 30 yards away, I want it to smell like I'm 300 yards away. And maybe that simply gives me the extra 10 steps I need him to take to get that shot. Again, along with the wind direction and the bedding area and the food and the thermals. And once again, all of a sudden we're getting super scientific, right?
Right.
But again, it all starts with what was drilled into you as a kid, right?
Yeah, and not everyone has that same belief structure, and that's fine, right? I mean, there's plenty of successful hunters out there that probably aren't as anal about it, for lack of better words. But to your point, newer generation of hunter, with all the information that's out there now and the data and podcasts and everything else, the information that's at your fingertips, if you're paying attention to some of that stuff, you're probably a little bit more on it, even if you're not an older hunter, but like a middle-aged hunter, like you're probably paying more attention to it than you would have in the 80s and 90s, no doubt.
Yeah. And a really cool comparison is, I said that my uncle was the hunter of the family. My family came from Italy. They moved to Argentina. They came here. Everyone has hunted at some point in their lives, wherever they lived, right? So on my mom's side, on my uncle's side, everyone hunted at one point or another in their life. My dad, I don't even think touched a firearm until he met my uncle. So it's like two completely opposite worlds coming together. And it took my mom like 10 years to convince my dad to finally go out hunting with my uncle. And he finally did in 1990. I was born in 1991. So my dad was hunting as I was growing up, but he never, how do I want to put this? My uncle knew to a sense where to go to find the deer, the thickets, the points coming off a ridge, thicket, get deep in the woods, all that good stuff. But my dad paid more attention to the flashy side of things, personalizing his arrows, building his own arrows and buying, the nice rifles and the Berettas and all this stuff, So my uncle was tact and my dad was flash. Now, the reason I say this is because my cousin will go to Walmart and buy a dozen pre-built arrows, go out and shoot. I build my own custom arrows from scratch because I don't trust anybody else to build my stuff. So It's like, again, going back to what we're talking about here is you start with this concept, the seed that was planted in you as a child, and you take it and run with it. Now, sometimes people go the complete opposite direction, right? Like you grew up a stand hunter. I don't know if you're still a stand hunter or not. We're going to get into that in a second, but maybe you do, maybe you don't. Now, on that theme here, transitioning, what was the turning point for you? When was the turning point from dad tells me where to sit or where to look or where to go or kind of guides me, I guess is the better way to put it, to Ben is now standing on his own 2 feet and starting to figure this out on his own? What was that? Can you remember that turning point for you?
Yeah, it would be tough to pinpoint like maybe the exact day in the woods where it all came together, right? Or the exact time. But I'd give a range, and I would say probably in the ages of, 16 to 17. It's probably where it started coming together, young adult, 16 to 18. You've been in the woods a handful of years. You've picked up on some things. You've seen some commonalities or things that you need to pay close attention to, and maybe didn't need the guidance from having, an adult, or in this case, my dad with me and kind of guiding me through everything. Right? Definitely up until like age 14, 13, probably even 15, right? Like early years of high school, like freshman, sophomore year, I still relied on him pretty heavily. And I think as I got to like junior, senior year and beyond, I started being able to be more independent. And legally in the state of Maine too, I believe it's still the law. I'd have to double check myself, but I believe until you're the age of 16, you have to be accompanied by like a like an adult, right? Like a legal guardian. They got to be like with you in the woods. So they can't be like separated or whatnot. So he was always with me until that time anyway. But I think it was right around 16, 17 if I had to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jersey's the same. If I think up to 13, like the person that you're hunting with can't even have a firearm in their hand. Like they need to be specifically focused on you. And then I could be wrong. Dude, I hunt so many states. I haven't been a youth.
It's hard to keep track of them all, man.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if it stayed that way until we turned 16, or if it was like 0 to 13, they had to be completely no firearm, no nothing, and then 13 to 16 maybe it was within a certain distance of each other, like eyesight or something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I could literally be pulling that out of my ass. I don't remember.
I wouldn't know any better anyway. I've never hunted there, man. So you're good.
But I do remember growing up and pheasant hunting for sure. When I was on my youth license and young, I started pheasant hunting like 10, 11 years old. That's where I got my start. And it was with a single shot, break open shotgun. And my dad didn't want me to have to ever worry about pumping or taking multiple shots. He wanted me to understand that the first shot is the most important. And it's also the safest. So that's what you're going to get, So that was really cool.
That's great advice, man. Yeah, I'll tell you, it's part of the reason I think my father set me up with a single shot 243, right? As I mentioned earlier when I started, it was one shot, man. So that's the most important. You want to make an ethical kill. You want to make an ethical shot. Don't take a shot that you're not comfortable with. And when you only have one in the chamber, so to speak, well, if you miss, you're not going to be able to, crack her open, take the round out, put another one in, crack it. Like odds are the deer's gone at that point. So yeah. The first shot's most important.
So as you're 17, 18, Ben's just graduating high school, right? What are you thinking about as you're entering the woods now? Are you like, man, I got this? Or is it now is when you're starting to figure things out for yourself? Or do you feel like by the time you were kind of out on your own, so to speak, like you had a pretty good idea and you were kind of running your own system at that point?
Probably thought more than I actually knew at that point. As a 17, 18-year-old running around, man, I'm sure I thought I knew everything, not just about hunting, but yeah. And I was in college too, so I didn't hunt as much from the years 18 to 21, right? Like as I do now, or even before I was in college. So I think college I did go to college in Maine. I still hunted throughout college, but I hunted less than I probably ever did, right, in those 3 years. But yeah, I probably thought I knew more than I did, but I feel like every time you go out, you learn something new. And I was definitely still learning. I think you never know everything. And that's one thing I love about hunting. It's a challenge. You're constantly learning. You're constantly bettering yourself in the woods and as a woodsman, right? As an outdoorsman, even like that. I think I'm always learning. I felt like I had a pretty good grasp at that point at, my age. Like I had everyone's version of success, certainly different, but I got a few bucks, handful of bucks or whatnot. I felt like, okay, I got a pretty good idea of this, but when you're on your own, maybe something you didn't have to think about that you now have to think about, like walking a little bit slower, right? Or, maybe kind of taking a better look around before you take that next step. You don't have that person over your shoulder kind of telling you that anymore. So I made some mistakes where I'd like bump a buck that and walk into a stand or whatnot. And I was like, oh, geez, I screwed that one up, right? Like that was a squid move, but.
Whether you're a competition archer stepping to the line in the finals or a hunter drawing back on your personal best, you owe it to yourself and the animal to have the best functioning equipment out there. That's why when it comes to bow or arrow components, the Wing and Tail boys pick Fire Knock products every time. Every product they make is proven to outperform anything already on the market by 50% or more, and they have the science to back it up. They've even made it so easy to find the components specific to your arrow shaft with their Fire Knock Arrow Component Selector. If you're ready to up your equipment's performance today, check out fireknock.com. I feel like everyone has one of two mentors. It's either don't worry about it, we'll get them next time, or the mentor that snaps their head around the second you snap a twig and you just see the life drain from your body.
Yeah, I was the latter, man. Dude, I was not. It was drilled in me. Yeah. It was drilled in me pretty good. Yeah.
That was my uncle too. Stop being lazy. Pick up your damn feet.
Exactly. Yeah. No BS, man. None of that. No.
Exactly. So you touched on something earlier where I'm not going to lie, I was kind of surprised or taken aback by it, because what I try to do on this podcast is I've been watching a lot of YouTube and trying to find hunters from the Northeast, Maine down to Maryland, Pennsylvania, that general area. And literally just about every single person that I find from the New England area is a stalk hunter. They're a tracker, they're a rifle tracking through the snow hunting. Like it's at least the searches I've been doing, it's been very hard to find like a set stand hunter from New England. So has stand hunting been the only way you hunt? Or have you transitioned into tracking? Have you ever tracked and hunted?
Oh yeah, good. That's a really good question. Yeah, and I will say, talking about the states in general, Maine and New Hampshire, right, and definitely in Maine, I would say that Maine is more the northern part of the state and the northern part of New Hampshire too, where they tend to have a little bit more snow in the earlier in the season. They tend to be the trackers and the ones that are, they get a nice, that fresh snow, right? And they find that big buck track when they're driving a logging road and they get out and they get on a track all day and they either catch up to them or they don't, right? And I've certainly done that. I'll be honest, that's not my strength, right? Like I'm not a master tracker by any means. And that's one area that I've always wanted to improve on is that tracking ability and being able to stay on a big buck track and get after them. So I'd say 80% of what I still do today is stand hunting. The other 20% is more of that tracking or, stalking, still hunting, right? Kind of. Mm-hmm. But I think it does matter where you live. There are a lot of, in Maine and New Hampshire and the more southern parts of the state, you're going to find a better mix than you are in the northern part of the state. Like northern Maine, if they're a big buck hunter, they're a tracker. Northern New Hampshire, there's those like Northwoods Bucks guys, the North, whatever they call it. They're after those big 200 plus pounders every year and having a lot of success. And almost every video I watch of these guys, they're tracking. And that was like nothing I did growing up, right? It's like a total new thing, but both are successful. Yeah.
Okay. Now I told you earlier that my family and I spent a lot of time camping in Maine throughout my life. On one of those trips, maybe even two, I can't remember, we ended up on Cadillac Mountain up in Acadia National Park, which first off was absolutely beautiful. Gorgeous if any area. Of my listeners have never been there or have never heard of Cadillac Mountain is the most eastern piece of American land in all of America. And it is the first piece of American soil to be kissed by the rays of sun every single day. So getting up there for the sunrise was really cool, and being like the first people in the country to see the sun, that was really awesome.
Yeah.
But I say this because Cadillac Mountain's like way up there. And as you're driving through Maine, starting from the moment you cross over New Hampshire and start driving through Maine, you see less and less and less people, and the woods become more and more and more vast. Now, obviously, driving through the highway, a lot of highways are cut through the trees. So maybe some of you are saying, no, that's no big deal. What I mean by vast is when you're driving on highways, you can usually look off in the distance and see towns and buildings and structure and whatever. You don't see that past a certain point. Right. Same thing goes for Vermont, parts of New Hampshire, but specifically Maine in this portion of the conversation. All of a sudden, people no longer exist.
You're right, man. Yeah. And it's funny, you mentioned Cadillac Mountain and, and for the Mainers that may listen, right, they get a kick because to them, that's like down East Maine or Central Maine. You're not even really like north of, like when you really northern Maine, you're talking like the county, like Presque Isle, Caribou, Fort Fairfield, or the Rangeley Lakes region, like north of Angor. And I think getting back to earlier, I mentioned there are a lot more deer per acre in the southern part of the state than the northern part of the state. So if you're going to stand hunt up in that, you mentioned the woods are so vast up there, right? And they're so big. It would be difficult to find a lot of sign in an area you feel comfortable setting up in a tree when the woods are so big that, he could be anywhere. So what a lot of those guys do, they drive a logging road and I'm sure they got some spots scouted out, but they'll be on a piece. They drive a logging road. They got a little snow and they're looking for that big track. They want that wide track, put the shell casing in it. And they're like, that's a good buck, right? That's the sucker I'm after. And they go, right. And they'll follow them wherever they go. And I think they're more successful doing that because number one, there's just less deer to hunt and they want to track that big buck and they drive till they find them. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah. So last year was my first true attempt at a track. I think the year before, like I just mosey through the woods with like a rifle in my hand. But like last year, I got out in the woods. I was like, you know what? I haven't really had the time to scout our family property as much as I really wanted to. There's snow on the ground. It's rifle season. Screw it. Let's do it. Right. So I went out tracking. At this point in the season, I had hit a doe with the bow and didn't recover her. Later on in the season, I got pictures of her. She survived. So as long as they survive and they're not, suffering forever, I'm content with that, right?
But Chris, that happens. Not to cut you off, but like that's part of hunting. It happens.
Yeah. So sidebar, real quick. So I've been hunting since I was 10 years old. I think I started deer hunting when I was about 15. I'm 30. I'm going to be 34 in September. So just shy of 20 years I've been hunting. Up until 3 years ago, every single deer I hit was in my truck. I never hit a deer that I didn't bring home. And then 2 years ago, I hit a doe, and what I thought was a great shot, never recovered her. And then last year, so 2 years in a row, hit, no recovery, and it kind of messed with my psyche, But
it will.
That's besides the point. Like, so I'm sorry, bow season, hit a doe, didn't recover. Rifle season, shot a doe early, like the first weekend I think it was of rifle season in New York. So then when I go on this track, I didn't want to shoot another doe. My goal was a buck. We have like a doe group of somewhere between, I would say, 12 to 18 doe that reside on our property and the properties that border ours. Yep. So we don't have a terrible herd, but it's not big by any stretch. So, the neighbor might shoot one or two, the HOA might shoot one or two. So we kind of have a limit, 1-2 doe off our property max every year. Let everybody else shoot the doe, because we're not against shooting them, but we also don't want to decimate them. Yep. Like we were saying earlier, the doe will bring the bucks around. So at that point of the year, I had already shot a doe with the rifle. I go out tracking. Mind you, again, it's my first true track. I had an idea of the areas that I wanted to go and look at, and when I got to where I expected to find sign, I did. I found a main trail, beaten in. I started following it. Then I started finding like cross tracks and everything. And it's actually funny because I was recording a video. I vividly remember hitting record on my GoPro, and I look up and there's a doe staring at me. And I picked up the rifle and I put the rifle on. I put the crosshairs on her vitals. I decided not to shoot her, and I put the rifle down. I took a picture instead. So it was really cool because it was the first ever experience in tracking, and I had the opportunity to be successful. Right. So never mind that. I was successful. I had a shot and I chose not to take it. The reason I bring that up is because all of a sudden tracking seems fun. It was never something that I wanted to do. I never wanted to haul a rifle around the woods all day long. It never seemed fun to me until it worked.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's a great story, and that's cool that you came up on it here that you could have taken, right, by tracking. And it's what I love about it is it's its own, like every type of hunting has its own challenges, right? Whether you're stand or, tracking or whatnot. I think tracking deer is extremely difficult. And then like I've traditionally always hunted with a scope. All right. Well, when you're hunting from a stand, usually the deer aren't running. Usually they're walking or feeding or, broadside even. That's a pretty, if you got a scope and it's under, 100, 150 yards and you've practiced and been sighted in, which is another huge tip I'd give any hunter. Like, do not even bother going in the woods if you're not going to be ethical and be sighted in and practice. Mm-hmm. That's a whole side thing that I have, right? Just my own thing. But yeah, like, so when I started tracking a handful of years ago and getting into that a little bit and having a scope, it's very difficult to track a running deer with a scope, when you bump them, right? And like when you pop up on one and they're kind of there and they see you when you see them and you got to make a quicker shot. So I know a lot of guys that do that, they might use open sights, which I historically was never an open sight guy. And, now I have two, right? I got a rifle with a scope and I got one with open sights and, depending on what I'm doing, or like, it's good in the rain and stuff too, right? Like I think raining's if you don't have snow and you want to move around and track, rain is great, right? Makes your movement silent, brings the scent down. It's a good time to track without snow, but tracking's tough, man. It's wicked tough. Yeah. It's not easy.
It really can be. And my thing is, and anyone who's hunted with me, and I've said this on my podcast before, I am like the biggest goofball in the woods. What I mean by that is like, no matter how hard I try, like I trip over shit, I stumble, I crack, I break twigs. So for me, it always seemed like tracking just wasn't possible. because no matter how hard I tried to not make noise, I always made noise. So it almost seemed like the day I went out, and honestly, it was probably more of a walk than anything, right? Like I just walking through the woods with my rifle, following some tracks, and it made me realize that you don't have to be perfect. Make sure the wind is to your face. Make sure, the nice thing was it was a windier day and it wasn't dead silent out in the woods. So I was able to get away with a little bit more.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something I do. Maybe late season comes this year here in PA and I haven't shot something yet, and I say, you know what, screw it, we're going for a walk.
Yeah. Well, and it's also tough sometimes, like when you're a stand hunter like me, right? So you'll spend a lot of time in a tree, man. You'll spend all day in a tree. And that can get, I mean, look, patience is important, and I'll sit out in the woods and I just like being out there and it's peaceful, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to move around a little bit, right? Get the blood flowing, like go on a little walk, like it's not going to hurt nothing. And you made a great point about the wind. Like on a windier day, it's not as quiet as long as you got, the winds at your face, you're downwind of a deer you might be coming up on. Like they're probably not going to smell you. So you don't have to be perfect. Yeah.
Right. Now, the last segment of this, if you have the time to do it, we're at about an hour now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But in the last segment, I wanted to kind of walk through how you break down a new property and kind of pick out the areas, like where you're going to sit, how you pick out your stand, maybe like how you break down like a property before you get out there. But the cool thing in the unique scenario we have here is one area that you found success in your whole life was heavily deer populated. And the other area where you have your current personal best is a very low populated deer area or deer state. So I'm sure the way you go about breaking down a property or scouting or whatever are completely different because you're hunting two different types of deer. But before we do that, I really think it's important to understand, what is your goal when you step out in the woods these days? You're 31 years old. You've been hunting for 21 years. You have found a lot of success throughout your life. And what I found is that as people find a lot of success at one level, they like to bump up the stakes. They like to raise the stakes a little bit and say, okay, maybe instead of shooting 6 or better, now we're going to 8 or better. And then maybe instead of 8 or better, it's 3 years old or better, mature, blah, whatever the case may be. So when Ben steps out in the woods, what's Ben looking for that's going to make him happy when he leaves?
That's a deep one, Chris. That's a thoughtful question. So I'm going to say this. I truly love being in the woods to start there. I think you could probably pick up on that. I feel like we're very similar in that sense. I can tell that you're avid about it and you love being out. So for me, having the time to do it and spending the time in the woods is really what makes me happy as a hunter. The getting a buck at the end of the day, or getting a deer for that matter, is the bonus. It's the cherry on top, right? Like I'm not out there to just shoot a deer. That's not who I am as a hunter, right? Like I mean, of course it's important. It's the point of being out there is to have success, but like, I need an escape from reality, if you will, sometimes, right? Like the day-to-day grind of work and everything, like it's a lot. It takes its toll on you. And what I do for a living personally is very social, and I got to be like out there getting after it. And I need peace and patience and being in my state. So that's what makes me happy. Talking about my goal, if you will, I've had a lot of success. I've gotten, over 20 whitetail bucks in my career between both states. And, I've never cracked 200 dressed.
Okay.
That
pounds?
is my 200 pounds dressed, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Most people we talk to, 200, they're talking about inches on the antlers. Right.
Well, yeah. Well, if you're a Maine or even probably New Hampshire guy, you're probably talking pounds, right? And that's a good point, right? Like most really people, cool. They talk. Yeah. 200 pounds. That's and again, it's part of where I have always hunted and where I live, southern New Hampshire, whatever, central New Hampshire, southern Maine. Like there's not a lot of 200 pounders around, right? I've been very close a couple times. I'm like, right, I'm knocking on the door, if you will, but I would like to, I'd like to put the patch on the shoulder and feel like I got that. That's because they give you, whatever the patch thing they give you for shooting a 200-pound buck. It's
really?
New Hampshire does it. Yeah. They call it a patch deer. So it's got like the state on it and 200-pound club or whatever. Yeah. A couple of my buddies have cracked it. My old man's obviously cracked it a few times. Like he likes to give me. Yeah, he likes to give me shit about it too. So I gotta get on there. I gotta get it done, man. But,
does he give you the good old, I taught you everything you know, but not everything I know?
Yeah, and then of course, he's pretty good about it. He doesn't flaunt it out, but he's got it on the shoulder of the jacket, right? And I'm like, constant reminder. I'm like, there it is. But yeah, that's a big goal of mine, just to get that real heavy, mature buck. I have, the oldest buck I've harvested is 4.5, but he wasn't over 200. But I've gotten a few deer in that 4.5, 3.5-year-old range, like that. You got my fair share of them. A lot of younger bucks do. Yeah, and when I'm scouting a piece of woods, Chris, I mean, a lot of the stuff is similar, even though they're different areas. But I would say the areas I hunt now have less deer, as you mentioned. So one of the things I had, and there's a lot of pressure when you hunt public land, especially in this area. Like you mentioned, Greater Manchester. Like you hunt Greater Manchester, Zone L&M in New Hampshire, it's loaded with hunters. It's like there's like memes about it, man, where it's like, D-Day going off on Zone M right on opening day because there's so many people shooting guns. But I think one of the biggest things that I've changed, especially hunting public land, is I try to go where people don't. Honestly, like find an area that's less pressured, maybe go a little deeper in the woods where a buck is going to feel safer, right? And not like if you can just get out of your truck and, walk 100 yards and a couple hundred yards and be it up in a stand. Well, you and everybody else on that public piece of property is probably thinking the same thing, right? So you gotta get out there. So that's a big difference between the two that I've noticed. Okay.
Yeah. I got to ask you this question, and we'll give it it'll be a 2-stage question.
All right.
Stage number 1. You see a really nice buck walk out with a really small body.
Yep.
Are you shooting that buck, or are you letting them pass to try to meet your goal of a 200 dress?
I mean, it would depend on the body. When you say small body, you talking like 140, 150 pound deer, like something in that range?
I don't know what's big or small for your.
All right. Well, if you're
shooting for 200, let's say 150.
In Maine, I would let it pass. Yeah. Okay. In New Hampshire, if I was with my bow, again, because you can shoot multiple, if I was on public land, I'd probably take it.
Okay.
If it was rifle on either state, I wouldn't shoot that deer. No.
Okay. Now the next question is going to be harder.
All right.
Okay. You got 2 deer standing side by side.
Yeah.
One is your personal best buck as far as antler score, really small body. Mm-hmm. And standing next to him is a doe that is guaranteed to dress out over 200 pounds. Which one are you shooting?
I'd shoot the buck, man. I'd shoot the buck. Yeah, I'd shoot the buck in that instance. Okay. It'd be pretty wild to see it. That'd be pretty cool to see a doe.
Just a big doe that looks like she's missing antlers.
Missing antlers. Yeah, well, she could be. Hey, could be an antlerless. Yeah, well, it could be an antlerless buck, man. It could be an antlerless buck. You never know.
That's awesome. So it sounds like most of your hunting in Maine was pretty much done on private land. Is that accurate, or did you also span out into the public areas?
I'd say 70% it was on private land. Yep.
Okay. So by the time you, again, 17, 18, kind of doing stuff for yourself, at that point, was there any true, I want to go here to try to figure this out on the family property, or was it pretty much by the time you were, quote, off on your own, you pretty much had the property figured out?
I had the property pretty well figured out at that point. Yeah. And you always love going back there. You're sentimental to it, but I love going to new areas. I really do.
Okay. The reason I ask is because what I was going to do is I was going to ask a question and then ask you to answer it from the New Hampshire perspective and then also the Maine perspective. But it's going to be, we're going to talk e-scouting. We're going to talk going out, finding sign, blah, blah, blah. But so if that wasn't, how do I put that? If you haven't been as extensive in that in Maine, we could just focus on New Hampshire is basically what I'm getting.
Oh yeah. No, I've grown in the state of Maine where I hunt now. I would say 60 to 70% of what I hunt is actually public in Maine. 30-40% is privates. Yeah.
Okay. So makes it even easier then. So let's say you have an area in Maine for this entire next portion. You're in Maine in a higher deer populated area, also high hunting pressure because like you were saying, southern Maine has a lot of people. And then your New Hampshire area is low deer population, still high hunter pressure. You're looking for a new spot to hunt. Let's say the public land that you have in New Hampshire right now that you hunt, it got sold by the state. It's become private. And the stuff you hunt in Maine, same difference. You no longer can hunt anywhere you've hunted your entire life. You have to start from complete scratch.
Yep.
You're e-scouting. What are you looking for that says this is a spot that is worth walking into and starting to break down? Give us the New Hampshire response. Give us the Maine response.
Yeah. So we'll start with Maine. And I think the example you gave, just to make sure I'm on it, high pressure, high concentration of deer though, right? Like high population of deer.
High.
Yep. Hi. Yeah. So one, I would definitely be looking for the food sources, figure out where they're feeding, and I would be figuring out the runs to and from the bedding and the feeding area. I think that'll be consistent with New Hampshire. I'll just speak to both on that front. Like, and I think water is super important too. Like, if you're in a drought or they got to drink too, right? Like they got to drink, they got to eat, they got to, they got to do that sort of thing, and they got to sleep. So like, there's those three are consistent. I think wherever you go, high population in Maine though, with hunters, I'm gonna look for two things. One, where's the cover? Right? So where's the deer going when he feels pressured by all of these hunters? And where can I find visibility over said cover where I'm going to have an opportunity at that deer when he is either coming into the cover because someone's bumped him and moved him into a piece, or he's coming from his feeding and he's going to lay down for the day, whatever it might be. Where's he going to go for cover? And the other thing I would say is, like, we haven't talked much about it, but pinch points are super important in both areas, but like definitely with a high population of deer, if they're going to be concentrated to one piece and they have to move through it, I'm always looking for pinch points constantly, because I know that that's what they got to do to get from one place to the other, right? And if there's a high concentration of deer, they're going to move through it. High concentration of people, they're going to move them through it. In New Hampshire, low concentration of deer. I think for hunting bucks, I'd be looking for where are the does? Seriously, right? Like where, I mean, if there's less deer, the bucks are going to be looking for them. Right? Come November, come late October, really important to find the does. And again, getting far away from the pressure, I think you got to get out there a little bit further than you might want to. You got to be willing to scout a little bit deeper in the woods. I'm you've kind of picked up a trend with me. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to like park the truck and walk a couple 100 yards and be like, yep, this looks like a good spot. Like, there's some deer, there's a run here, and there's like, I'm going to go in pretty deep. I'm going to figure out what they're doing. And just getting away from where the average, everyday hunter is going to go.
Okay. So it sounds to me like no matter where you're hunting, no matter what time of year you're hunting, food is king. Like it is the number one thing that you're looking for.
Early and late, mid-season, during the rut, I want to be around does, right? Okay. Does are more important than feed in the rut. Yeah.
I got you. So food early, does mid, food late. Okay, good. So food and horny bucks. Love it. Next, you kind of beat me to the next question. With your pinch points, is what kind of terrain features are you looking for? Like when again, we haven't put boots on the ground yet. We're still on our computer. We're using Onyx, Spartan Forge, whatever it is that we're using. And we're trying to figure out, you said you've been married 4 years, no kids yet, but you got a fur baby, right? We got responsibilities. So as we get older, the time that a lot of us have starts to dwindle a little bit. So if you're trying to narrow down and say, okay, I only have 4 hours to spend on a Saturday to scout one place, what terrain features are you looking for that helps you make that decision?
Great question. Yeah. So and I think you pointed it out. I probably jumped the gun a little bit with pinch points, but that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for, right? I want to find an area that I know the deer are going to be funneled to, that they have to go through. So whether that's a pinch point on the edge of a field or a clear cut, maybe that's like out in the middle of a plot of land that you're hunting, or in a certain piece of woods, whether that's like if you're in a wetland and there's like a high area that they have to kind of travel through and migrate through, that's an area that I'll focus on. It could be a ridge, it could be a ridge area too, right? Like I think if you're hunting a mountainous type of terrain, or more of like I know we haven't talked like flatland versus that yet, but I like being on higher ground. I think the bucks like to go up, right? So mountain, like if you're up on find the high points, right? Find out, like try to get above them, try to catch them as they're coming up to you. I think I found that bucks like to be on those high points, and it probably because of scent and everything else, right? They can see more, they got more scent coming to them. They got a better idea what's going on around them and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Now, is that the same for both states? You're looking for the same type of terrain features regardless of what state you're hunting?
Yeah. Historically, that's what I've done.
Okay. Now, is there a specific terrain feature that like you drool over? Like, let's say you find this piece of land. You're like, okay, we got an oak flat here. There's a little stream that runs through here. So they got, early season food source. We've got water, for that. And then as you're like, okay, this might be good. And then all of a sudden you see this, you're like, oh my God, I have to check this out yesterday. Like, is there something that really gets you going?
Two things. Pinch points on edges of swamps really get me on. I love swamp, like hunting swamp donkeys, I call them.
Okay.
Those big swamp bucks. Like, I know they got to come through this piece of the swamp to get out and to get to their feed. Like, that's an area that's always going to get me hot and bothered. And the other one, if I'm hunting a more mountainous, hilly type of terrain, if it's got like a steep, best way to explain it would be almost like a cliff going up the face, and they have to like skirt around a certain way. Like, they can't scale the face of it because it's just impossible to go
like
right.
A bluff, like a
yeah,
bluff,
like
essentially.
A bluff essentially. That would get me going every time. Like, I would, definitely want to be on the edge of that where I know they have to funnel through to get around it. 100%.
Right. Now, are you willing to go to a spot if it's got one of these features? Like, you're looking at it and it's like, all right, there's a swamp here, so this is good enough for me to go check out. Or, this looks like a pretty decent oak flat where there's no other oaks in the general area. So yeah, this is good enough to check out. Or do you have to have, like, let me rephrase. When I'm e-scouting, I will not go and check out a spot if it doesn't have at least 3 different compounding features. Now, that could be food, water, and a ridge that comes off. That's honestly as basic as it gets. So if that's the scenario, food here, water here, and a little bit of a drop, like terrain change, I might need a little bit more than that. But what I'm getting at is, for me, in the limited time I have, I need to check multiple boxes for an area if I'm going to take the time to go and walk it. What does that look like for you? Do you also need multiple things, or is there one specific thing that if it's there, you're checking it out, even if it's just to cross it off the list?
More in alignment with you, Chris. I don't necessarily have the 3 rule where I need to see 3 features to make me like, yes, 100%, but I'm definitely going to shy away from areas that I think don't have as many features, right? I think at a minimum, food, water, cover, right? Or just does too, right? Like, does is a big one, like just deer activity in general. I'm going to spend time doing that because there's a lot of area to hunt. There's a lot of public land, right? So, and private land too that you might have permission to hunt. You only have so much time that you can put out there. I don't want to invest my time where I don't necessarily think it's going to be a good use of my time in seeing deer. Right. You got to be strategic.
No, I hear you completely. And it honestly, through the conversation, it really sounds like, for the most part, what you do in New Hampshire and what you do in Maine are relatively similar, with the exception of Maine. Well, both Maine and New Hampshire, you got to do a little bit more work to get away from people.
Oh, yeah.
So, but at least in Maine, with the higher deer numbers, you got to work a little bit less in order to at least see deer.
I think so. Yeah. Maine, southern, we're I don't hunt the northern parts of the states as much, but the southern parts of the states that I hunt, you hit the nail on the head. And there's certainly a good number of deer in New Hampshire as well, but I've found that there's more in southern Maine, but a lot of hunters in both. And if you're hunting public land, you're gonna bump into people. You're going to. Right. Like, you got to be accepted. And there's a lot of people that get really upset if they got like a blind or a stand up, or they're like, feel like if they're the first truck in a piece, like, everyone stay away. And it's like, yeah, you want to be respected. You don't
my spot.
Yeah, it's my spot. I'm like, dude, like, I'm not going to put a stand right next to you, man. Or if I go in with my saddle, like, I'm not going to set up, within a couple hundred yards of somebody. But like, if you're a mile or two in the other direction and we're just parked in the same spot, like, come on, right? Like,
I'm not going to set a stand up right next to you, but you keep going, I might just sit in yours.
Right. Yeah, exactly, man. Whoops. Right. Yeah.
Honestly, dude, I'll be honest with you. I've thought about it at times. I walk through the woods. I see a stand that's been left there. I've thought about it. It saves me time. Doesn't look like you're hunting it. But the flip side of that is, if I go out and I preset a stand on public land, first off, a lot of states you got to take it out the same day you set it up, or they need to be out of the woods at the end of the season. That's typically the laws that I've seen in the states that I hunt. But regardless, if you're out on public land and you leave a stand there, it's public. That's the way I see it. Now, if I go out there and I set a stand up, I really hope that whoever finds it is kind enough to not take it. And those are the kind of things that we've dealt with our entire lives in Jersey. But the truth is, if I leave a stand on public land, as long as you don't take it, if I'm not using it, sit in it. I don't care. I genuinely don't care. Now, if I find out you shot my target buck out of my stand, I might be a little upset. Yeah. But I only have myself to blame. Just don't take it. Just don't take it. If it's not yours, don't take it.
Yeah.
So
it's like with cameras too, man. I see that a lot more now, unfortunately, like, in a lot of Facebook groups and stuff. And there'll always be people posting like, guy took my camera, right? My trail cam. And it's like, what are we doing here? Right. Like, don't
Yeah.
be stealing it. Like be respectful of other hunters.
Exactly. Like we got to stick together. I've said it multiple times in my podcast. I'm pretty sure my listeners are tired of hearing it. But the truth is, like, we get so much flack from outside of the hunting community. Why are we taking each other's things? Like I don't know if you're familiar with Tooth of the Arrow broadheads. But Lee, the gentleman who does like the online marketing and all that good stuff, he's one of the two guys who basically work and run the company. His truck just got broken into, and every single piece of hunting equipment got taken. And first off, if you break into someone's car and see that it's hunting equipment and you take it, you're not taking it if you're not a hunter. That's number one. Like, what are we doing here? And it's like, we're a minority. So why are we going against each other? And then my buddy Brian, he shot the New Jersey record bear for bow this past year. And yeah, man, it was just absolutely, actually, that's how we met. We reached out to him to do an interview for the podcast, and we've been friends ever since, which has been really great. But he ended up going through a lot of flack after he shot the bear, and he had the opposite, where not quite the opposite, I guess, but he had a lot of the hunting community giving him a lot of shit. Whether it was, that's not the biggest bear ever shot. They shot a bigger one with a rifle or this or that or whatever. And it turned out that he got a lot of support from the non-hunting community throughout the scenario, which is like the opposite of what you think, but the 180 of how it, dare I say, should be.
Right.
So it was like, and I told him when he told me this, I said exactly this. I said, on one hand, it's really great to see. And on the other hand, it's really sad that you're getting more support from an opposition community versus the community that we go to, So we're going to be wrapping up here quickly. I want to know, though, since you're hunting public high pressure deer, are you aggressive year round, or are you like early season? Okay, let me stay on the outskirts. I think he's over here, so I'm going to set up 100 yards back on where I think he's coming from. Are you balls to the wall day one, or are you inching your way in with each sit?
Private land, I take my time, right? I want to pick the right day with the right conditions, and if I'm pretty confident that the area isn't being blown out by hunters, then I can take my time and hunt it the days I want to hunt it. Public land, I get after it early and often. And it's not necessarily by choice, but I know if I got a target buck, I'll be honest, right? I got a couple bucks that I think are over 200 pounds, right? Like on camera, and they're on public land, right? And certainly not going to share GPS coordinates with anybody, but like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that probably knows, those guys are running around. And if I don't get after it early, right, there's a good possibility that if there's another hunter out there that's paying attention and in the woods, you might get a crack at one of them, right? And I think that's another challenge of public land. You can't just wait for that day, right? Like the cold front moved in, the wind is right, everything just feels right. Like, private land, you can do that, and it's good that you can. Public land, I think, and early I would say is better because they haven't been pressured as much yet, and they're easier to pattern early. So I try to get after it early and often if I can.
Yeah. I've always said we spend so much time, maybe not everybody, but those of us who spend a lot of time summer scouting, 95% of that summer work that you put in is gone within a month, if that. Like that's the high end.
Yep.
2 weeks is gone.
Yep.
Especially in New Hampshire. My biggest gripe with New Hampshire is it is the shortest hunting season of any state I've ever looked into. Not any state I've ever hunted, any state I've ever looked into. October 15th to December 15th. It doesn't even make it to Christmas. It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's
it's technically September 15th, September to December 15th.
Oh, September 15th.
September 15th.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
But it's like, it's so small. And then my biggest thing was when I lived in New Hampshire, I like I said, I had a hunting dog. I got a short hair, a pointer. Yeah. And dude, he was in his prime. When I moved to New Hampshire, he was 4 years old, just coming off of winning a couple trials. Like, he was a dog, dude. And I get to New Hampshire and they only stock 3 times all season. And it is like still 87 degrees out when they stock.
Brutal, man.
What are we doing here?
I know.
So it's like, you got that. You got a super short season. And the reason I gripe on that is because most people have some time off around Christmas, New Year's, that area of time, right?
Holidays, yeah.
So at least extend the season to New Year's Eve. If you don't want people hunting on Christmas, shut it down for Christmas Day. In New Jersey, you're not allowed to hunt on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
fine.
and yeah, in Massachusetts, they'll let you hunt till the New Year's, right? Like New Year's Eve, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah. And I agree with you. And Maine's not much better. Unless you hunt expanded, which opens, I think it's September 1st in Maine, which is basically like the coast, right? It's like the east of the major interstate.
Mhm.
You get October 1st, the season opens, and I think it ends December 7th. It's even less than New Hampshire, dude. You get 2 months instead of 3 months. It's
That's
tight window.
terrible.
It's a
That's
tight
terrible.
window.
But then again, I hope, because this is their job, I hope that they're setting these dates and these windows and the time frame that you can hunt based on the population. I really, truly hope that as a state, Maine has a super tight deer population, and that's why they only allow 2 months of hunting. Because when I spoke to a game warden in New Hampshire and I said, how can you guys only stock 3 days a year? That's a little ridiculous. And his answer to me was, it may not be fair, but we don't have enough game wardens to go around. And we need to make sure that the stocking is done by the time moose season starts, so we could be out there regulating the moose population. So on one hand, I get it. On the other hand, it's like, that really sucks.
Yeah, that's not it's an unfortunate answer or an unfortunate reality, because if there were more game wardens, they'd probably do it more.
Right.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is then you got to be willing to pay more on your license. So it's like,
That's true.
there's always something. There's always a trade-off. I got two more questions for you.
Sure.
I appreciate you spending time with us tonight. We've obviously, I say this every week. I need to just stop saying it. We went over what I expected. At this point, I need to just start telling people we're going to be around for like an hour and a half. But I got 2 questions for you. One, if they're different for New Hampshire and Maine, which honestly I don't think they're going to be, but if you had your absolute ideal perfect spot, from terrain to food to location to elevation, what would the absolute perfect spot be for you to harvest a mature deer? And on what day, if you had to pick one day that you were only allowed to hunt for him, what day of the year would that be? So if they're different for both states, give 2 different answers, but describe your perfect stand setup and location and the exact day that you would hunt it.
All right. I would want to be up on a high ridge, whether that's a mountain or a hill, we'll say a high ridge, bluff in front of me, so they can't come right up to me. They got to kind of move on either side of me. I would want white oaks or beech trees down in front of me in like a flat that I could look down into. I'd want good visibility, at least a couple hundred yards down in front of me. Kind of, not it has to be 360 behind me, but at least a couple hundred yards in front of me in both directions. And I'd want a tight cover swamp on the other side of those beech or white oaks on the other side. That's 100% my ideal setup every time. And second thing I would say for the day, without hesitation, November 12th. November 12th.
All right. The big day around here is November 15th. You got to be in the woods
There
November 15th.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, man.
Similar.
Now, why the 15th?
Peak rut.
Oh, I'm sorry, the 12th. You said November.
Yeah, 12th, 15th. I mean, same. I mean, say 15th, 12th, right? I mean, peak rut, right? So bigger bucks are active. They're moving. I think that the probability of seeing one of those bigger, or a big buck, or maybe it's not a target buck, but just a big buck in general, is going to be higher on that day, because I think they're just more active and they're moving more during that time. That's why.
Okay. For us, at least on the private property, we have almost every single year, we have had something incredible happen the first weekend in November, whatever that might be. My brother 3 years ago had a shot at the number 1 hit list buck at that time on the first weekend in November. He actually gave him a haircut, got the name Buzzcut, and that food plot became the barber shop. So it's just like this long running thing. And he's a good sport. He came up with the names. The following year, he saw like literally doe after doe after doe after doe after doe walking through like same area. Following year, last year, I went out, I hit that doe that I couldn't find. But a lot of people listening to this will probably say, okay, so what? It's a doe. What was really incredible to me was it was the first true time ever sitting in the woods, November 2nd last year, where every single time I hit a call, whether it was a rattle or a grunt, something came in. I never knew it was possible to grunt or to rattle in a doe. I rattled in 2 doe.
That's pretty wild. Yeah.
Right after the doe came in, I had a couple younger bucks come through and start searching the area. So it was just, there's something magical about the first weekend in November on our property. And I think
That's cool.
every property is a little different, a little nuanced, right? Like if you moved 10 miles down the road, maybe their day would be November 16th, right? So it's like, it's just really cool how it's always the same range, but the specific day is always a couple days in either direction, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of weird because I've never been asked that before, but when you asked it, it hit me right between, like, I didn't have to think about it. I just knew. I was like, there's, weird.
Instantaneous.
Yep.
Yeah. To wrap this up, why don't you break down your setup? What are you bringing in the woods with you? I'm going to assume that early season and late season is relatively the same with the exception of like some clothing and whatever your firearm is. So tell me what you have in your bag. Like, what do you bring in the woods with you? And then what is your bow setup like? And what is your primary rifle like? And then we'll wrap it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So we'll start with the firearms, if you will. Rifle wise, I hunt with a 7mm 08. I shoot 140 grain Remingtons primarily for a shell. Typically have a scope, like 3 to 9 variable scope on there. And if I'm stand hunting, if I'm going out, and maybe I'm doing still hunting or not still hunting, tracking or something to that regard, I might take out my 20 gauge, right? Use like Sabo slugs depending on where I am and have open sights, just, pump action on the 20. I have a 12 gauge too, but I prefer the 20. It's got like a rifled barrel on it. I like the Sabos. They reach out a little bit. In the early season, I used to be a compound bow guy, like true and through. I'll be honest, when they opened it up in both states where you could hunt with a crossbow, I hate to say I was that guy, man, but I am that guy. I migrated. I know, dude. I know. It's good. You can lay it on. I get it. I get it from time to time. It's good, man. I love the traditional compound bow guy, man. I love the guys that stay true, but I did, I hunt with an M1 10 point now, right?
Nice.
Pretty common crossbow that's out there, but yeah, so those are my setups that I typically run and gun with now. Time of year, I mean, early season, I'm not taking a lot of calls and stuff with me because I think they're primarily looking for food. There's not a lot of rut activity going on. I mean, I might hit like a soft grunt here and there. I don't typically rattle, but I'll soft grunt from time to time to try to get some interest in the early part of the year. October, I'll start using scent mid to late October. Some people think I'm crazy. I found that you can get a big buck in the area curious before the rut really kicks off. I actually have better luck with scent a little like pre-rut or right before it really gets going than I do like during the rut. And I'll always have my grunt with me and like a rattle, like the rattle for antlers on the antler rattle for like November, October, pretty consistently. But I don't do a lot of calling. I'll be honest. I'm more of a sitting. Yeah, I'm that guy that's like, I'm going to screw it up if I friggin' call or do something, for whatever reason. That's like, I'm like, just let it happen, man. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If I try to make it happen, I'm not going to sound natural, but I know some guys have a lot of success with grunting and rattling and stuff too. So
I gotcha. Now, really cool perspective because I'm very similar to you. Like the moment I'm hunting, I'm using scents, whether it's urine or scrape, because studies show over the last, 10, 15 years that deer using scrapes year round. It's not just during the rut, right? So basically, biologists have pretty much stated that the moment a buck's velvet drops, they are ready for breeding season. From the moment their velvet is rubbed off, they're scent checking, looking around for the first hot doe. So it makes a lot of sense that you have a lot better success with scents earlier in the season because they're looking for that first one, and when they smell it, it fires them up.
Yep.
So I'm in the same boat. However, I do like to call early season because if they're looking for that first hot doe, and I can get a buck to think that a younger deer or something is tending to the first hot doe, who knows?
Good point.
So it's like, again, it's just really cool how different perspectives or different areas or different success rates, we all come from different sides of the spectrum, and we somehow find a way to meet in the middle. And I absolutely love it, man. So I want to thank you again for joining me today. I mean, this was honestly a really great conversation. a lot of similarities to the way we hunt and a lot of differences. I think as pressured as New Jersey is, I got to be honest with you, I think New Hampshire is way worse. I could go hunting in Jersey and not see other hunters. I don't think I ever went hunting in New Hampshire and didn't see at least one or two other trucks where I was hunting, like ever.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, I always see them. That's a great point. And I loved your perspective there. I never thought of that on the calling front early. It makes me, I'm going to change it. I'm always open to changing things too, man. So, maybe I'll run in that buck in early season and have to let you know. But Chris, I got to ask you one thing.
Yes,
That
sir.
buck in the background behind you has been catching my eye for a good chunk of time now. You got to tell me that story before I let you go, man. I got to hear it.
To be honest with you, it's kind of, it's cool and it's not. So I shot that deer 2014. I was in college, and every year before that, again, we were corn hunters. We were out putting piles down, camera, seeing what's on the camera, blah, 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 whatever. That year, being in college, having the dog, running trials, I ran out of time. And it was like late August before I got my first bag of corn out and put my first camera out. The next week, I went out and checked the camera. I had a beautiful 7-pointer on camera. The following week was the opening weekend of deer season. So in New Jersey, we have the early season, which is called early earn a buck, where you have to shoot a doe before you're allowed to shoot a buck. But that season also opens up 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the state. And it's only available in like highly populated areas. And once that first 2 weeks is up and the whole state opens, you can shoot doe or buck, doesn't matter. So we go out first weekend, mind you, only 2 weeks after I put a camera out, 1 week after I saw a buck on camera. So that Saturday we go out, I shoot my doe, I now have earned a buck. So now I can go out and earn a buck. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. All I could think about was this deer that I saw on camera. So I wake up in the morning, I said, fuck it, I'm not going to class. So I think I got my stuff together, like left the house around 9 o'clock, went out and sat like a late morning into evening type of sit. All day long, the wind was absolutely insane. 30, 40 mile an hour gusts, like to the point I'm sitting in the tree. I'm like, what am I doing out here? I should be in my bed, right? So it was like somebody flipped a switch, like 45 minutes before I saw him, the wind just died. The woods went completely silent. And it went from this howling, crazy, loud to nothing. And as soon as the wind died, I hit my grunt. Mind you, this is probably the second week of September, third week of September. So it's like super early season.
Yeah, real early.
Yeah. Now in my head, I'm thinking, okay, on camera, I saw a whole lot of young bucks on camera. So it's not out of the ordinary for a buck to hear a younger buck. So I use the extinguisher call. I dropped down to the young buck sound and I hit some young buck grunts. And I saw him come out from a thicket and enter another thicket. Didn't see him again. Hit the call again. Boom, he comes in. Took him like forever to walk, like not a whole lot of distance, maybe 70 yards he was walking. It took him like 30, 40 minutes. So he comes in, gets to my corn pile, very, very, very cautious. Now, the only nice thing about him taking so long to come in, at the time I was also using a crossbow. So anyway, so the beautiful thing was I was able to keep the crossbow scope on him the entire time he was walking in. Yeah. And the entire time he was cautious at the corn pile, I had my scope on him. So when he finally stepped out to the corn pile, all of that adrenaline, that initial spike was gone. And I only had to deal with what was going on between the ears. Yep. So he was really hard quartered to me. I was wondering if I should take the shot, if I shouldn't take the shot. And then he turned his head hard left and looked over his back, like his back left leg, and it opened up his whole shoulder. I took the shot. He like jumped, didn't know what happened, looked around and literally rolled over backwards. Didn't have to track him, didn't have to do anything. And the cool thing, probably my favorite part of the story isn't even harvesting him, isn't the whole scenario that went down. My favorite part of the story is I had to call my roommates to come and help me get him out, because as I'm sitting there making phone calls, I'm hearing coyotes all around me. I never gut him in the woods because I was worried, because at the time, New Jersey, you weren't allowed to carry a sidearm while you were in the woods. You couldn't carry it anywhere. So I call my roommates. They show up. We cut a tree down. We tied the deer's legs together, put the tree between the deer's legs, and literally carried the deer out of the woods over our shoulder. until we got him to the car. My dad and my brother met me there. We're all doing the whole thing because I saw, like, again, I saw him on camera. This is the first deer we went out, saw on camera, went out and shot. Or at the time, I thought it was him. Turns out that it was a different deer that looked exactly like the one I had on camera. This is an 8. The other one was a 7, and they look exactly identical, except the other deer had a broken brow and this guy didn't.
Oh, cool.
So it's like, for me, I'll be honest with you, it's a bittersweet type of thing. Like, I'm not upset that I shot him. Obviously, I love that it's there. It's just a completely different hunter version of me. This was, I shot him when I was a bait hunter. I was hunting with a crossbow because at the time I didn't have the time to practice with a compound. Not that, how do I put this? If you do right with a crossbow, I don't mind it. My issue with crossbow hunters come in to people who, like you were saying earlier, if you're not going to take the time to practice and be proficient with your firearm, but you're still going to go out and shoot an animal, how dare you? So it's like that is probably my biggest thing. And at the time, I'll be honest with you, I didn't have the time to go out and practice.
Right.
So yeah. I was the crossbow hunter that I don't like now.
Fair. That's interesting.
And then again, then I was baiting. Nowadays, I try not to bait if I can. If I do it in the summer just to get inventory, Sure. So I don't regret shooting him. It's just, it seems like a lifetime ago because I have transitioned into this new style of hunting. I've become this new style hunter and it's just different. But yeah, man.
But I think your past stories, Chris, make you who you are today, and you've experienced both sides now, right? And, sure. And it's still a hell of a buck. So I wouldn't, don't worry about how you got him or what you got him with. I mean, it's a great story. It's a great deer and, it's, yeah.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks for the walk down memory lane. That was cool.
Good, man. Cool.
As we wrap this up, do you have like a YouTube channel? Do you record any of your hunts at all? Is there anywhere people can follow along with your hunting journey if they wanted to find you?
Not currently, man.
All right, good. So you're the silent hunter, man. You just go out and do your thing and that's that. I love that.
Yeah.
So simple. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Cool. If you guys want to know what Ben's got going on, you got to go and track him down. Find that big footprint. Find that big footprint in the snow and try to track him down before he gets out.
I love it, man. I love it. Maybe I'll bump into one of the listeners, man. You never know.
Hey, you never know what could happen. But Ben, this was a phenomenal conversation. We finished it just in time as the sun seems to like literally be setting wherever you are. So again, thank you so much for your time. I think it was a phenomenal conversation. It was really great. I've been hoping to get back to New Hampshire to do some hunting again. Probably not this year with a newborn, maybe next year. But it would be really great to get together, even if I don't actually hunt with you, to just come out and do a little recording for you or just spend some time in the woods together. I think that'd be really cool. You, me, Adam, get out in the woods, camp out, do a little something. It'd be a good time.
Chris, I love it, man. You hit me up next time you're in New Hampshire. I'll take you out. No problem at all. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to take you up on that. Well, cool. Again, thank you for your time. To the listeners, thank you so much for joining us here again for another episode of the Wing and Tail Outdoors podcast. You guys know the drill. If you like what you heard today, this was our very first New England guest. Everyone else up to this point has been from the tri-state area, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. We are starting to expand. So if you guys know any other hunters that you think would be quality guests to have on our podcast, anywhere from Maine to Maryland, Pennsylvania, even some Ohio if you got them, send us a message, DM on Instagram if you want. Let us know. We'd be more than happy to have anyone on the podcast and chat. Love a good hunting conversation. If you like what you heard today, if you feel that you found some value in what we talked about today, drop on down below. If you're on Spotify, just go ahead and leave a 5-star review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, drop down, leave a 5-star written review. It really helps the podcast out, and it also allows me to know what it is that you guys are looking for us to talk about next. That's all I got for you guys. Again, thanks for joining us here on another episode of the Wing and Tail Outdoors podcast, where success is just a commitment away. Y'all have a great week, and we'll see you here next week, same day, same time. Have a good one. That's that.